I got the green light. All right, so before we actually talk about the vote itself, I want to describe a couple of terms. And my head won't be in the shot at all times, but you can follow my voice as I move through what's here on the sheet. So I wanted to give an example. Right now, it's 2019. We're trying to raise a $5 million fund. We've raised $500,000. But our goal is to raise $5 million by the end of 2020. So let's imagine in 2020, we have raised all of that money. The second piece here I've written says rate of return on lending. And I'm going to describe all these concepts. But just so you can start imagining this, we're trying to make all of our investments by 2024. So although we're going to raise all this money, we hope by the end of 2020, we won't have invested all of it until 2024. That's because as we look at deals, some of them are $50,000 investments, $100,000 investments. It would take a lot of those smaller investments for us to deploy all of the $5 million that we hope to raise in such a short time period. So it might take us until 2024. So just hold those two concepts in your mind. One is that we're raising all this money in a short time period, over 2 years, and we're going to be investing it over 5 years. So these terms I've written up here are first, cost of capital. So what is cost of capital? Cost of capital is what we owe to all of our investors across all of the note pools. So there's the Emoja note pool, there's the Kujichagulia note pool, there's the Imani note pool. What we owe to all of our investors across all of those pools is the different interest rates that they've selected. So some folks have said, I want a 2% return on my money, or a 1% return, or no return at all on my money. When we blend all of that and we weight it, we have the weighted average cost of capital. And the reason why we weight it is because we might have some folks who said they want 0%, but they only gave us a small amount of the total. So we have to give that percentage a weight in relationship to the other amounts of money that we've raised. So that's what cost of capital means. Rate of return applies to both our lending and our equity investing. So the rate of return on lending is the interest rate. So if you are lending money at 5%, your rate of return each year is 5% until you're all the way repaid. If you're making an equity investment, it works a little differently. You're receiving dividends each year, and then you're receiving the balance of what you invested, the bigger chunk, at the end, typically. So now that we've talked about those concepts, cost of capital, what it is, again, what we owe to all of our investors across all of those pools, and the rate of return, which is what we collect from borrowers as interest or dividends on our investments, a problem starts to emerge, which is that let's say as of 2020, we will owe on average 2% to all of our investors. So if we've raised $4.5 million, that 2% is equal to $90,000 that we owe to our investors. Then let's talk about 2024 for a second. So it's 2024, we've deployed that same amount of money. We've deployed $4.5 million. We're getting back, let's say 6% interest from all of those businesses that are paying us back. So in that year, we could make $270,000 if we're charging 6% interest. So in 2024, it's great because what we owe to our investors is less than what we're making from all of our investments. But in 2020, we owe $90,000 and we haven't deployed all this money. So we're not making $270,000 back to cover the $90,000 that we owe. So the question we had to ask is, where do we want to put this money before it gets deployed into deals so that we can still make at least 2% and pay back all of our investors? So the vote that we're going to have today is all about that question. It's what are the different banks we want to invest in, the different funds, the different money market accounts, so that we can get to some sort of a number close to 2% so that we're not losing money while we're holding people's money. Does that make sense? Yeah. Great. The last thing I want to sort of cover, and this is just for folks that are interested, this is what's called a spread. So in this scenario in 2024, there's a small spread, right? And the spread is the difference between what we're getting paid and what we owe. So what's the spread if we're getting $270,000 in 2024, but we still have the same number of investors, so we still owe $90,000 in 2024. What's the difference there? Asking people to do math in public is kind of like, you have to be shamed if you get it wrong. It's not a,
ask it again.
yeah, so no, I just mean it like it's a bad setup. So if we're making $270,000 and we are owing $90,000, the difference there is about 1.8, exactly. So in that scenario, in 2024, if we've deployed everything and we have the same number of investors, we have a $180,000 spread. But right now, we have the opposite problem, which is, let's say we have raised all this money in 2020, we have what's called negative carry, which is when we owe 90,000, but we don't have interest coming in from our investments. So that's just a primer for why we're having this conversation and why we're going to vote on which banking products that we should be using for the fund. And now we can jump into the Menti.
Sure. All right, so we are using Mentimeter, which is just an online software that allows us to gather people's votes, and all you do is just enter the relevant code and you're in. And you can do it from your phone as well, and it actually shows up. It's like designed to work really well on a phone. So Lucas, if you just tell me when to hit next, I will do that for you.
Awesome. So let's just restate some of what I've said. So far, we've raised over $500,000. So we haven't raised the full $4.5 million we want to, but we're on our way. And so it's getting real. We're holding these ballots and these votes to get your voice as voting members on where we should put this money before we put it into investments in businesses that we've been talking about, the businesses and business loans. Not all of them are going to be banks. Some of them are going to be money market accounts, investments in other funds, maybe, if folks feel that that makes sense. The voting members agree. But this is just one of a series of votes that we're going to be having. The next vote will be on the businesses we should invest in, the standards we should use to assess them, and the partnerships that we should allow as we look for folks who might want to co-invest with us or give us deals that we should be considering. Appreciate you, Joyce. So you can go to the next one. So if you want to get a video recap of how we got here, you can go to the website, ujimaboston.com/vote. You can jump to the next. So you can just keep moving through these, Sarah, every like 5 seconds.
I guess I'll just ask, does anyone want to vote as we're going?
Oh, thank you.
I might want to vote after, but I don't have a phone.
Okay.
If you do have your phone, you can do all this on your phone. You just go to menti.com, and then Sarah can read you the code if anyone wants to do this right now. I should say right now we're at about 51 or so voting members who participated. We need to get that up to over 100. So if you are a voting member and you haven't voted yet, now would be a great time.
We have to get to 51%, so we're not going to close it until we get there. Yeah.
So each round you want to do more than 50%.
Yes. Louise, do you want to use my phone? I know you said you wanted to kind of see everything and then vote. So, okay. All right. Cool.
And does anyone else need the code on Menti? If you do, just raise your hand and we'll fix the code.
Okay. Cool.
So with Menti, you can't go backwards. So each time you say a vote on a given page, it's locked in. So just take your time, and once you vote, move on to the next one. Try to read everything that's on the page. We thought hard about only putting what's useful on each slide, so there shouldn't be unnecessary information on that. And there's space for feedback at the end. So if you have like a thought as you're moving through, like this slide is unclear, we want that feedback put at the end. Okay, so
test run. Nope, it's a test.
So if you're not a voting member, you won't even have access, right?
you could theoretically go through this, but we're asking folks to kind of self-identify. We're going to have your email address, so we'll know on the other end if you are active.
Let's get started.
Okay, you want to read that one, Sarah?
Sure.
Or
Does anyone else want to read it? Yeah, read it out.
We have to keep the money for the Ujima fund somewhere, but where? We want your help deciding on our plan for where to keep our reserves and our funds before they are invested. We know that finance can be complex. Don't worry. It's important that we know what you think. We'll try to provide enough information for you to make an informed decision. Should you have any questions, please let us know at the end of this ballot.
Cool.
So this goes back to something I was saying over here. We're trying to get to 2% on average. And we might even be a little higher, a little lower, but just hold 2% in your mind. There are not any checking accounts that I'm aware of that give you 2%.
They're not even 1%.
Not even 1%, right? It's 0.045 at best. So we are going to need to use a blend of different accounts to get to that number. Maybe we put $1 million in a checking account, $1 million in a money market, $1 million in a fund. And then over time, as we make investments, we'll pull it out of each of those products. But this is just reinforcing that point. We're going to use a blend of different types of accounts. Yeah.
How liquid do you need them all to be?
We don't need them all to be liquid. Like we'll have some, we're managing our own pipeline of investments, so we'll know how quickly we need to pull money out. I'd say on average, we want to have probably a quarter of the money with like 3 months liquidity at all times. But we won't be pulling out all of the money to make one big change. Okay, who wants to either read this or explain what a checking account is?
And we want to go, we are coming up close to our time where we want to break into member teams. We can take a little extra time, but we'll just keep it going. So, just so you know, Lucas.
Okay.
I'll read it.
Thank you.
Checking account, interest-bearing account, most liquid, money can be accessed quickly.
Yep.
Right.
So
So your
it's,
checking accounts, we should use for bills.
Yeah.
because it's always ready to go.
That's right.
Money market account. Anybody use one of these? Yeah, you want to say what's on the slide?
Luis, would you like?
Well, yeah, well, I do have a money market account, but I'm not quite sure, but it's, you get a higher interest rate, but you have, you can't withdraw as fast.
That's right. So it's less liquid, higher interest rate. That's the trade-off.
Isn't there a penalty too if you withdraw?
There it is.
But that still isn't too much either.
What about a fund? Like the Ujima fund is a fund. So this is a structured pool of money set aside for a specific purpose. You can get the highest rate of interest from these financial products, but they're even less liquid than a money market account. Like an Ujima fund where your money's really locked in for 3 years. Certificate of deposit. Anyone have a CD? Or know what, you want to say what
Yeah.
a CD is?
A CD is, well, something, but it doesn't make quite as much as money market, but you have to tie it up for about 3 years or something.
Yep.
And there's a penalty if you withdraw it.
Perfect. Okay, so we found 7 financial institutions that we think are mission aligned with Ujima, and these are the ones that we're asking you to vote on and say, yes, I approve you working with them, no, I don't, and we're showing each of the products from each of those on the slides.
Oh,
Some terms that folks should be aware of, one is FDIC Insurance. Anybody seen the FDIC logo at a bank? Who knows what it means?
it means it's insured. I don't know if they rate, it used to be 100,000. I don't know if it's still 100,000.
It's gone up a little more, it's 250,000 now.
Yeah.
So it means if you have a checking account, you have $300,000 in it. If the bank were to go down, this group, the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation, steps in and gives you back $250,000. You would still lose 50,000 in that scenario because their obligation to you is only 250,000. You got 300,000 in, the bank failed, you got some of it back.
Most of us don't have to worry about that.
That's right.
My understanding is that it would be fairly useless, that the money first goes to all the big cats who don't need it, and there's nothing left over for everybody else. So I wouldn't really believe in this too much.
I do believe it, because they have bailed people out.
And although there's a conversation to be had about that and Social Security and other systems, we're just going to identify terms and keep going. The idea is you have less risk with FDIC than the fund.
Yeah.
So return, we already covered return, so we can skip this one. Mission, we're thinking about banks and financial institutions that have a mission that aligns with ours.
How many banks have missions that, well, oh,
I know.
You'd be surprised. There's some benefit corporation banks, there's some funds. Yep, Eastern Bank does a lot of small business lending, funds that only invest in women and people of color. So there's some good folks out there across the country. Next one. Okay, if I can keep going. So the first one we're going to talk about is amalgamated bank. This is the benefit corporation. So who's heard of B Corp before? Ever heard of B Corp as a title? Well, I'd encourage folks to look it up online, but a B Corp is essentially an assessment of companies that rates them in a number of different categories and says whether or not they can be trusted, either as environmentally friendly or as having good labor policies. It's a pretty rigorous test. This bank has been certified as a benefit corporation. They're based in New York. They're a national bank. Here's the rates on the different products that we're considering from them. Any questions I can answer about this?
So basically, as you're voting, you're going to be going through and looking at the bank and then deciding which products you're okay with Ujima putting money in for the Ujima fund.
So do you have to have it all put one there, or you have some put checking, some put?
The latter. Some people might just say, I'm okay with you using the fund, but not the checking account.
Does the fund have any kind of insurance other than the FDIC? Is it common for funds to not have FDIC insurance or?
I'm not aware of any funds that have FDIC insurance.
Okay.
There may be some out there.
So this is a fund? Oh, no,
They
no.
have three products. They have a checking account, money market, and a fund. Or rather, they have three you're considering.
No, but so we just check one for each bank?
No, we can actually, we love it if folks, well, I shouldn't say it that way. You can check as many as you like for each of the banks.
So it's please approve the products that you're comfortable with. So it's basically like if you want to give your approval to everything, then that's totally fine. Or if you want to approve nothing, that's fine. But we're going to tally to see if there's like majority that doesn't approve of a certain product at a certain bank, then we wouldn't put the money there.
But you say the fund is not insured.
There are no funds in this list that are insured.
But there's no limit to the amount that you can approve.
No, but I'm just thinking if,
Let's keep it.
Yeah.
Okay. Submit.
Okay, the next one is Metro Credit Union. Anyone want to describe what a credit union is generally, or have familiarity with this bank? We'll talk about it. Yeah,
the members only.
that's right. This is a member-owned financial institution, as all credit unions are. It's also a co-op. So we're looking at their checking account, which has 0.045% return, and their money market account, which is a really high return actually, 2.227, which is above our cost of capital. Any questions about this before we jump? Check out this category as you're doing the vote on your own, what the money's invested in.
Did you guys do any work on like seeing what it was invested in?
So there's descriptions next to each one. So a money market account always.
Oh, that's not insured either.
No, it's not. A money market account, and they don't have the FDIC, so they have something called the NCUA. So the checking account is insured, but NCUA, the money market isn't, and it tells you where the money's invested.
Oops. Okay.
No, that's good.
Okay. So. Oh yeah. See, this is something we need to fix.
Well, you can click
Oh,
on
none
it.
of the above. Great. Submit. Okay. One United.
One United, Black-owned bank, headquartered here in Boston. Hey, Scott. We're looking at their savings and their money market account. You see they have a little bit of significantly different rate for their money market.
Next. Okay. I'm just going to be very critical and not approve of anything. Test.
Eastern Bank, as Joyce mentioned, does a lot of local lending, and they also put some money in public markets. The other thing that they do, though, is they give 10% back of their net profits each year as grants to nonprofits.
That's great. So we could get 10% back?
We got to talk to some big wigs at Eastern Bank about that.
Mm-hmm.
They have a pretty good roster of nonprofits that you never would have, not just like March of Dimes type of stuff.
Nice.
We good to move on to the next?
I think so. Any other questions about Eastern? So if someone was okay with everything in this one, then they would just literally click those three: money market, checking, certificate of deposit. All these sound good with me. Submit.
Love Eastern.
C-Note. C-Note is a fund of funds. So what that means is they are funding purchases of notes at other CDFIs. There's a lot of jargon. CDFIs are financial institutions doing direct lending to businesses. So there might be one in Milwaukee, one in Oakland, one in New Jersey. C-Note is purchasing a product, a note, that gives some money to each of those three financial institutions on the ground. And as a perk of lending money to those institutions, they get repaid. And what they get repaid, we get repaid, which in this case is 2.716. They're actually probably making more than that because they have to make money for themselves. But the point is, this is a high return product that's invested in things that are other loans. So there's some risk associated with that, and it's natural.
Like looking at their logo, and it looks like really fresh and cool. But it also makes me wonder how long they've been in business for.
So they're relatively new. Check out their website to learn more. We feel confident that it's worth considering, worth talking about.
You know what you're doing.
No, but you're totally right to question it and keep digging and figure out if you feel comfortable with it too.
Also, I'm not, maybe everyone knows what CDFIs are, but that's community development financial institutions, which are things like the Neighborhood Development Corporation that owns this building we're in right here.
Mm-hmm.
And which are all about community investment, not just making money. So
Mhm.
that's.
And Boston Community Capital, Boston Community Capital is a well-known one.
Mm-hmm. CDFIs have a required percentage of investment that they need to make in low-income communities in order to have that designation from the federal government.
But they vary, the different neighborhood ones vary. Some
Yeah.
of them are good and some of them aren't.
Yeah, it's not
But
necessarily
what the
outrageous.
distinction is still important between a CDFI and like a Bank of America.
Move along. Great.
Move Up Capital, this is the new name of Boston Community Capital, which you just pointed out. You see the return here. What they're investing in is a network of mission-oriented projects. This is the CDFIs. Many of these projects are real estate investments. Affordable housing typically is where they focus.
I just have a very quick question.
Yeah.
So with any of these, depending on the amount of money you put in there, it's also going to determine your APR. Does it work that way, or?
Great question. So yes, but the trigger or the thing that would determine that is typically like $50,000, and we're always going to be putting in more than that. So the rates that we're showing you are the rates we're going to get.
Okay. Last one.
Cooperative Fund of New England. This is the regional nonprofit CDFI. They're doing lending to co-ops, co-op businesses, worker-owned co-ops, purchasing co-ops, food co-ops. They're about a $35 million fund, and they're returning about 2%, 1.92% to folks that invest in their fund. As I mentioned, the money's going to housing cooperatives, other cooperatives, and some nonprofits. And it's not FDIC insured.
Questions?
Just that they say they've never lost more than 1% of their investors.
Yeah, and they've grown pretty dramatically from like a $5 million fund to a $35 million fund. So
How old are they?
hopefully Ujima's.
They've been around for a while. Yeah.
Back
A little bit
to,
on the conservative side in terms of their investment of dollars.
did you say that Boston Community Capital will give you the full 2.8 or whatever for 50 grand?
For the amounts that we're considering.
50 grand would entitle you to get the full amount.
I believe so.
All right.
We're reaching out to them to verify. That's my understanding. So this is where all the feedback or questions would be.
So we can actually we're going to take like 5 minutes for questions, and this is the end of the ballot. So if folks have questions about any of the institutions or products, or just generally have questions at this time, we can take 5 or so minutes before we go into our member teams.
Could you go back to Amalgamated?
Which one do you
The
want?
first one.
Amalgamated.
Amalgamated. Yeah, so this is one weakness of this software is that you cannot go back in time. So what I think we are gonna do upon learning that that's been frustrating for people is post like a document where you can just see all the charts in one place.
So as you go along, we can compare.
So as you go along, you can compare.
Have you made like a chart that shows all the different ones together?
That's what we're talking about. Yeah, exactly.
It's in
So-
the drive.
Like, yeah, like one table with all of it.
Yeah, that's exactly right. We got like a Google sheet that's just got all.
Because we'll need that if we're helping people vote as well, right?
Sure.
I was just trying to go back to Amalgamated for Louise, but while we're doing that, are there any other questions?
My Google is out of order, as in I haven't received a single Google message from my Google groups for the past month or so. Well, really? Well, Google, I don't know, I was signed up for Google Groups for Outreach, and I got nothing after the first message. So, is this gonna work for me without Google?
Yeah, this is not Google Family.
Oh,
Okay.
There's amalgamated release.
Yeah, you just need to put in an email address, but it doesn't have to be Gmail.
oh, shoot. Their returns are nothing.
Well, then check out the funds
For the
though.
money market and the checking
Oh.
account. Are there any other thoughts or like feelings, reactions, or questions?
So then I guess everyone's ready to go vote.
Yeah.
Kind of, I have a question, but tell me if it's not, it's more of like a financial literacy question. What allows a institution to give more return on certain accounts? Like why would amalgamated only give 0.045 and like One United Kingdom? I forget what it was like overall.
It's tough to answer that for all the products, but the high level answer is the spread. So it goes back to that example I was giving about the spread on what you're charging borrowers versus what you're giving back to folks who are investors. In this case, we're all investors in those products, and they're taking our money and lending it to someone else. So in the amalgamated fund, they're getting pretty good return on treasury bills. Treasury bills will get you from 2 to 5%. Government bonds will get you from up to 5%.
Can you repeat the question? Just because Nia and other folks on Zoom couldn't hear, and I think it's a really good question.
The question was, why can some products give a higher return than other products? And I was saying it's tough to give a uniform answer for all of them, but one that I think holds in all these scenarios is that it's the difference between what they're charging folks that they're lending the money to, and that informs what they can give back to you.
And so, well, I forgot one thing, but I said too, it's also, all banks, they charge, if you let them keep the money for so long, they give you a higher interest rate.
Right.
And flexible, how much can you take the money out of a fund?
Yeah, great question. Generally, the funds you can't take the money out of as quickly as some of the other things like a checking account. Money market accounts and certificates of deposit also have what are called like lockup periods.
Does the fund have a longer lockup period than them?
Sometimes it's equal, sometimes it's longer.
But a fund is a little higher risk because it's not insured, but
That's right.
but then the return's more.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
More risk, more return is typically the rule.
Is voting on paper an option?
Yes.
I would prefer to.
Yes. We
Less
can.
work for me.
Mm-hmm. We haven't printed out any versions of the ballot yet, but we very much intend to do that. And if you want to vote tonight, then we can try to. We probably can't print them tonight, but we'll make sure that we have.
But you say I can
Printed
use your
ballots.
phone or computer or something.
You can use a phone or computer, but for people that want
Oh,
to have them
okay.
printed, then
But I
make
think
that an option.
Louise was also asking if she could use this computer.
Oh, yeah.
And I think the answer is yes.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Sky, if you wanted to use a computer here while we're here, you're welcome to do that as well.
I might ask if somebody could sit with me and just go through it real quick.
Yeah,
Because I don't
Definitely.
really want to be stumbling around through it.
totally.
You got it.
Do it.
Yeah, I think we should probably move to member team meetings, and we can do for the first like 5 or 10 or 15, however long it takes for folks that want to huddle and vote. Maybe Lucas can huddle with you, have a little voting station, and then you can join the member teams that you want to be at once you're done. How does that sound? Cool. So